Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm very excited to be sharing this video with you all today. Today's video is a tiny bit different, but also not too different. I am going to be giving these two things mini makeovers, as I'm calling it. And mini just because they're really small and the makeovers aren't really that drastic. So first here, this is like the shell of a fruit from El Salvador, where my mom is from, that she brought back with her from the last time she went to visit. And then I have this Winnie the Pooh figurine, which my mom tells me was actually a candle or a cake topper from one of my very first birthdays that I've had ever since. And I'm going to be giving these two things mini makeovers today. So this fruit shell thing, I'm not really sure what it is, but my mom told me it is the shell of the árbol de moro, the fruit that comes from that tree. I'm not really sure what it is in English or how to explain it to you in English besides it's the shell of the fruit from that tree from El Salvador. Then this Winnie the Pooh figurine or cake topper or candle thing, as you can see, it's a mess. It's kind of all melted and scratched up and beaten up and could honestly just use some color. I'm starting first with my acrylic gesso, which is what I do with pretty much all of my painting projects. And I'm giving a couple of coats of this white acrylic gesso over this Winnie the Pooh figurine. I don't really remember getting it. I only remember having it growing up in all of my life, and it always pretty much looking like this. And while I don't really have big plans on how to change it, I do kind of just want to bring it back to life and, you know, make it not look such like a mess than it already is. And I think it was a candle just based on the kind of candle wick that I felt on one of the jars of honey and just the overall waxy feeling to the figurine. And I'm not really sure if you're supposed to or if you're able to paint like candles, but I did, and it's been fine, so I guess it's okay. I did add a little bit of yellow puffy paint on the top of that jar just to kind of cover up some of the bumpy bits. And honestly, the biggest change that I did to the original was I changed the color to the jars of honey. This figurine has 3 jars, 2 next to Pooh and 1 that he's holding. And I believe traditionally he's always with blue jars. But I kind of wanted to add my own touch of color to it, so I did a pink one, a purple one, and a blue one. And of course I'm kind of sticking to my general pastel version of colors. Even though the first patch of that red shirt that I did was very dark, I later go in and give it a lighter touch of red so that it would look better with the yellow fur that Winnie the Pooh has. And after many coats of paint, this is kind of the base that I'm starting with. As you can still see, it's still kind of bumpy and not perfect, but it is already looking a lot better than how it started. But from here, the rest of the details are really small and hard, so I'm filling them in with my Posca paint markers, which are just markers with acrylic paint in them. And so I used black to do in like the eyebrows and his nose and his eyes. And I did go ahead and do my initials at the bottom. And then once that was dried, especially in the eyes, I very delicately tried doing the tiniest of white highlights in his eyes, which actually worked out, thankfully. And now I'm going to be using this matte Mod Podge over all of it, just to help seal it in the paint and hopefully prevent any more damage done to this little guy. Also, it was still very sticky. I don't know if it was because of like it being a candle or if it was just the paint, but I just really wanted to give it a good sealant and make sure, since I was working on it for a long time, it would stay protected. And although it doesn't look like it, it did take a pretty long time to finish. But I'm actually not completely finished. I'm deciding that I want to add one little last detail. I used a matte varnish sealant to seal in everything, but I'm going to use this glossy finish, which is also a sealant and protectant, but it also adds a glossy finish, only to the parts where it's actually the honey, so in his hand and in the jar. You can see here kind of where I put the sealant, so it would have a nice glossy and shiny finish to it. I felt like that little change in texture and just the glossy finish would make it look more like honey and more wet or liquidy, I guess. It's not like a huge difference, but I really liked it. I felt like it was subtle enough, and it's a technique that I kind of want to start using. But moving on to this fruits from El Salvador, or the shell of the fruits. My mom told me it comes from El Árbol de Moro, which is árbol is Spanish for tree. I'm not really sure what moro is, but she brought this back with her from when she went to El Salvador the last time, and she actually asked me to decorate it for her. But I didn't want to like give it a complete makeover or change it. I wanted it to still be very noticeable and obvious of what it is, at least to her, because it is one of her last memories from there, from where she's from and her home. And so on the inside, as you saw, I only wrote El Salvador and did some little like cute decorations in the colors of the flag. And on the outside, I'm going to try, emphasis on the trying, to draw the El Salvador flag, which I've done many times and I've grown very familiar with it. But the little insignia and symbol in the center of the flag is always cause for trouble, especially on such a tiny scale. I can't show all of the details, but I did try my best to get in as many of the details and just try to make it as accurate as I could, and hopefully it shows, at least for the people that recognize the flag, hopefully they can still recognize that this is the Salvadorian flag. And I honestly really liked how this turned out. It was really simple, but I again didn't want to change and cover up the whole thing. I wanted a lot of it to still be visible, and I only added the sealant and Mod Podge only to directly onto what I painted and slightly around it, so that you can still feel the naturalness of the shell. And like that, both of these mini makeovers are done. This honestly took a lot longer than I thought it would, but it was also really hard, especially with all the crevices in the little Winnie the Pooh figurine. But I really enjoyed it, and I hope you all enjoyed it as well. Thank you all so much for watching. Bye!